I finished reading Officer Clemmons by Francois Clemmons, and he played Officer Clemmons on Mr. Rogers. This book sent me down a wonderful trip down nostalgia lane, and if you yourself were a huge fan of Mr. Rogers, please leave something in the comments. What sort of emoji would Mr. Rogers be? I don't know, a heart because he was so kind. So I mentioned in a previous video that I was in the middle of reading, or I had just started reading Officer Clemmons. This is the memoir of Dr. Francois S. Clemmons, who played Officer Clemmons on Mr. Rogers for like ages. Ages. I mean, it was like a span of 20 years or something, from like the 60s to the 80s, 1960s to the 1980s. So this, I think I'm calling this something like I'm obsessed with Mr. Rogers or something. But first, I want to talk about Officer Clemmons because he is the focus, obviously, of this book because it's his own memoir. So I do want to talk about that, but then I do want to talk about the nostalgia rabbit trail that this brought me down. This is the life of Dr. Francois S. Clemmons, and if you saw, was it my last video where I was only just like in the first few chapters or something, and I was talking about how he's describing his childhood and really traumatic things from when he was just 4 years old, and it broke my heart. And I was talking to my other video about how I was just like, oh my goodness, this little guy, he's only 4 years old and he's going through so much trauma, and my heart was just breaking for him. And then I was like, Kendall, he made it. You know, he's 81 now at the time of recording this in 2026. He's 81. He made it. He's not that little boy anymore. He can talk about this in the past tense. So I needed to keep reminding myself of that, but it was just heartbreaking to think of a little boy going through such painful things. And he has just such a sweet, tender heart, and he loves singing even at that young age. And so anyways, that was really hard to read about, but you may remember if you saw my last video, I was talking about like, if you liked the show Mr. Rogers, this might be interesting to you. But even if you aren't familiar with Mr. Rogers, you still might love the book because it shows someone going through so much hardship. And 4 years old was just the beginning. I mean, it was a rough beginning, but he had trauma in his early childhood. He had trauma in his teen years, and I would argue into his adult years, and due to like racism and encountering all of that. So anyways, it covers some heavy topics, and I would always, like, check content warnings if you're sensitive to certain types of things. But I did want to give my overall impression of the book. I had originally said like, oh my goodness, I think this is going to be like a 5-star read. And I did not end up giving it a rating at all when I finished it, because there were those original feelings of like, oh my goodness, this little 4-year-old and what he's been through, and he perseveres, he keeps going. That is true. That is part of what was in this book. But I ended up not giving it the 5 stars. I mean, like I said, I didn't give it any rating, but I didn't give it 5 stars because of a few other things. But I want to keep talking about the positives before I go into the things that were kind of like, oh man, I'll get to that. The positives are, like I said, a story of someone going through extreme trauma and persevering and continuing to go forward in life and move forward and follow after his singing dreams and succeeding. Like, if you just Google him, you'll see that he was able to lead. He created choirs, he led choirs, he traveled the world, like huge dreams of his coming true, which it's always nice to see someone, get what they were hoping to do, like to realize their dreams is what I'm trying to say. So I was happy to see that. What else? I appreciated his courage in sharing about racism that he encountered, and so I am grateful that he shared those encounters and those, what do you call it, systemic problems that he encountered, and that many people probably still encounter today in different ways. So I appreciated getting more of someone's personal experience with that. Um, now, now I'll go to the things where I was like, oh man, it didn't quite go where I was hoping it would go in some aspects. For one, you may remember when I first started talking about this book, I said, I'm really curious to read this story or read this memoir because I really am interested in hearing Francois Clemmons' perspective on this moment that is depicted here on the cover. Now, this moment, I don't know if you know, sorry, the camera is shaky because I'm holding it with my hand. This moment, if you don't know, was this is the second time Mr. Rogers did this scene. He did it the first time in the, I think, 1960s, and then he did it again in the 1980s, specifically sharing well, I can't use air quotes because I'm holding two different things, quote unquote, sharing a quote unquote pool with someone who is Black. So someone who's white sharing a swimming pool with someone who is Black. And then he also, in both scenes, they share a towel. So if you have never learned about this, or if you're from a different country or whatever, in America's history, there was a time where it was like literally swimming pools, there were white swimming pools and Black swimming pools, and you could not share a towel between the different races. It's just disgusting is what it is. So Mr. Rogers was deliberately making the statement saying that he was going to share the pool with Officer Clemmons. And then he just did it. You should Google it. You really should Google it. I would go online on YouTube and just put in like Mr. Rogers and Officer Clemmons, or the pool scene, or I don't know how you would describe it, but it's very low key. It's not like this giant preachy moment. He's just like, hey, I'm washing my feet off. You want to join me? And it's just a very normalizing, calm scene of people interacting the way that people were meant to interact, without weird, disgusting laws and rules of not being able to swim with someone who's a different skin color. So, I mean, as you can see, in some ways, that history is extremely infuriating. It gets me angry thinking about that and what individual human beings like Francois Clemmons experienced. It is infuriating, but it is also encouraging to see people. See if I can. I just don't want this to shake so much while you're watching this. It is encouraging to see people take a stand or make a statement, or just create bridges between them and others. So that was something, that was a great moment on the show. But the reason I bring it up is because I wanted specifically Francois's experience on that moment and his thoughts. Like, I wanted to know, like, did that land the way that Mr. Rogers was hoping it would land? Did it actually speak to the issue in a way that was helpful? Or, like, I wanted something like, I just wanted to know what his thoughts were on that. Well, he does share about his time on the Mr. Rogers Neighborhood show, but he never ever talks about this moment, this one in the 80s or when it first came about in the 1960s. He doesn't talk about it at all, but he at length talks about his relationship with Fred Rogers, but he doesn't talk about the wading pool scenes at all. And I was like, oh, but it's on the cover, and I wanted so bad to know what his thoughts were. I did, of course, Google it, or I went on YouTube and looked up Officer Clemmons videos, and so I did get his perspective on that. But I really thought it would be in the book because I thought like, wow, this is like a big deal. So, anyways, that was frustrating where I kept waiting for like, okay, when's he going to talk about it? When's he going to talk about it? And he never does. Something else that I found, I don't know, frustrating or I guess kind of a bummer. I don't know how else to say it. It sounds superficial to say it was a bummer or cheesy to call it this. But there were for part of the book we get Francois's interpersonal relationships with his family, with his church, with his community. We get what do you call it? Like national events, like historic national events. Um, but then when he starts talking about going off to college, during his instead of saying like, "Oh, when I was in college, I actually ended up seeing this person or doing this with this person," instead of just like summarizing it, he kind of like goes into, I mean, not too much detail. It's not super graphic or anything, but there are things where like some of the things he describes, I'm like, okay, so is this going to come in later? Or like, why are you telling us this interaction? And then it never comes up again, or that person never comes up again. And I'm like, oh, what was the significance of, Like, I feel like there's a huge chunk of the book where he gets a little bit, it feels like he gets a little sidetracked or like, he gets a little sidetracked into telling us all his like intimate partner relationships and like that not again not super details. I mean a little bit more than I would prefer, but like nothing super graphic. But just things where I'm like, I don't know, like why? I don't know. And that leads me to the most disappointing. I'm just gonna say it. I was disappointed. The most disappointing part of it was that like he talks about how one of those relationships that he was in for years was with someone who was already with someone. And I thought, okay, all right, this is a memoir. He'll probably reflect on it and be like, looking back, this was not kind to the other person who didn't know this was going on, or this was not ethical, or I regret it, something. But no, unfortunately, he even like romanticizes it, like tells about certain things that to him were like really romantic and special, and kind of wanting us as the reader to be like, oh. But I was like, when are you going to say that you were with, like, by being with this person you were the other person, like I was going to say he was cheating with someone, but he wasn't with anybody at the time, um, officially, but the other person was. And so that I just, even in a fictional story, I get frustrated if the character does something where you're like, oh no, why did you do that? Like, I get frustrated if it seems like the author wants you to like their choice or be like cheering for that choice when you're like, I can't cheer for that. But if a main character makes a poor choice and then later it shows they're like, well, actually, I realized that that was not a wise choice or that was hurtful. Anyways, so that was a bummer. But anyways, that was Officer Clemmons, and I'm glad I read it. And also, so that leads me into being obsessed with Mr. Rogers. Okay, I'm not obsessed with him, but I will say, after reading this book, when I went onto YouTube and went in search of clips of Officer Clemmons and Mr. Rogers, and then of course YouTube is like, oh, you want videos about Mr. Rogers? Here's all these others. So then I was like, I was actually brought to tears. Please tell me if this happens to you. Please Google if you are a child who loved Mr. Rogers. If you grew up loving Mr. Rogers, as I did, loved Mr. Rogers, regularly watched Mr. Rogers, enjoyed Mr. Rogers, if you can relate to that, please Google Mr. Rogers singing different songs that he would sing, like Mr. Rogers singing It's You I Like, or Mr. Rogers singing There Are Many Ways to Say I Love You. Officer Clemmons sings that too in in this clip, um, Officer Clemmons sings it, and I'm like, brings me to tears, you guys. Does it bring any of you to tears? Okay, I need to. My hand's getting tired holding them. Okay, so please, if you were a fan of Mr. Rogers and you Google Mr. Rogers singing those songs, please tell me. Because it was so interesting in watching these videos of Mr. Rogers. My first thought was like, or like my first emotions or my watch, I noticed myself when I was watching video clips of Mr. Rogers from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. In my mind, he was in the emotional category of my brain that family members are in. Okay? So then, of course, that brought me to thinking like, was Mr. Rogers' connection with his viewers like the first example of like a parasocial relationship? You know, it's kind of like a while ago, everybody online was talking about parasocial relationships with YouTubers or actors or whatever, and kind of like making it sound like this really bad thing. Being like, you don't know that person and they don't know you. And I was like, yeah, that's true. That is kind of an unhealthy thing. And then I'm like, hang on, but I feel like Mr. Rogers was actually in my family and he knew me and loved me. He still loves me, even though he's long gone. You know, like I noticed myself having all, like he literally had a space in my brain for that I have family members, like grandparents, uncles, you know? So I was like, wow, was that like the first parasocial relationship? And I'm like, if it was, I don't care. Because and I kept thinking in my head, I'm like, Mr. Rogers was my friend. I don't know if I used to say that as a kid. I don't know, but please Google Mr. Rogers singing different songs and tell me if you get a tear in your eye or more. Because man, those videos transport me to a very nice, calm, peaceful, great feeling time of childhood, you know, just like watching Mr. Rogers. And I also remember when I got to a certain age and I started hearing classmates saying like, Mr. Rogers is a baby show. I'm like, but like babies wouldn't understand it. So I was like a very literal like, but that doesn't make sense logically because babies don't even understand the show. So anyways, I went all that to say I love Mr. Rogers. Do you love Mr. Rogers? And let's go down the Mr. Rogers rabbit hole together because he's a wonderful human being who touched many lives. He was by no means perfect, of course. No human is, but he changed many lives, and I think he spent his life well. So that was Officer Clemmons and Mr. Rogers, and let's chat in the comments about Mr. Rogers. I hope this video is not too shaky, but I managed to hold it up for 18 minutes. Wow. All right, signing off. See if I can hit the sign off button. Bye.